Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? I'm not doing that great. Okay. Got everything settled. Another day where I barely made it to the keyboard in time, but okay. Ready to roll. Friday, September 30th. I don't know why I lie to you and tell you I'm ready to roll. I'm not. Let's see whether everything goes smoothly today. Actually, it won't matter too much. We do have some production staff in-house today, so that's helpful in getting the part of the production staff that has to make it to school but might miss the bus to school anyway, but thankfully it's happening on a Friday. All right, well, barely made it, I guess, as I said, to the keyboard in time, and gonna be a little on the irritable side, but that's just because of the news. Not because I didn't get to gulp down breakfast, which will now sit like a rock for the next 2 hours. So, this is kind of what you're in for today. And of course, it's a solo effort today as well, and lots to wrap up. Thankfully, there's plenty of news waiting in pocket and information, being traded over the internet. You can change the direction of our show at a moment's notice with the KITM hashtag. But lots to catch up on, as I said. What I'm going to have to do is search out some writing on what's happening with as between everybody's good friend Judge Aileen Cannon down in the Southern District of Florida and, well, everybody else in the judiciary and everybody who thought they knew how law worked up until this point. But yes, this waiting for us, and I'm going to have to find a little bit. I guess I could just read the order, but Darwin saw it yesterday and sent this thing to me yesterday. Probably I can go over to the Twitter account that he's re-forwarding here and find some info about what's going on here. But let's see. Where are we that... you know what? That's an interesting thought, too. I got so many things going on here. So many people offering me such good content. All right, hang on just a second. Let me see if I can put some things aside. Oh, of course, I'm in this stupid new replacement for TweetDeck that very annoyingly, it used to be the case that you could simply click on a link in TweetDeck to a tweet and it would open up that tweet in a browser window, but now it opens in a second window in TweetDeck, which is of no use to me whatsoever. Anyway, all right, putting that all aside, Liz Dye was the tweeter that Darwin forwarded to us. Who's Liz? Well, she tweets, for one thing, as $5 feminist, which is an expensive price as a feminist goes. But, inflation being what it is. Let's see, bylines from, ATL blog. Is that like Atlanta blog? I don't know. And Wonkette, that we recognize. So at any rate, let's see. She was covering the Judge Cannon developments. Cannon apparently got a hold of the report or the preliminary report anyway, that the special master, what was his name? Judge Deary put out, basically saying, okay, well, this is how I'm going to proceed with my assignment. And having reserved the right to pretty much ignore or rewrite everything that Deary said, Cannon, true to her word, basically says, this order is stupid. I think you should do something much easier and much better for Donald Trump, is what ends up happening here. Her tweet thread on it, as Darwin asks me, have I seen this, let's say, well, he asked me in so many words, have I seen this? Now I have seen it. And let's see if we can't read through Liz's exposition of it. Breaking, Judge Cannon just cut the teeth out of Special Master Judge Deary's order, gives Trump every modification he asked for. And there was some disagreement in the comments to that. Now, didn't cut all the teeth out, but it's apparently highly unusual. In his objections to Judge Deary's case management plan, Trump complained of being forced to say whether, as opposed to say if, she says if, any items in the inventory were planted. Remember that Judge Deary was very tough on the claims that were being made both by Trump's attorneys, which were different from the claims that were being made by Trump himself when he spoke to the media or used his crazy special personalized social media platform that does nothing but serve up his nuggets, or speaking to one of his rallies. Oh, that brings me to another of the stories. Anyway, let's see. Anyway, the Judge Deary, the special master, apparently said, well, listen, if you are going to run around saying that evidence was planted, I want you to go over the inventory and tell me what items in the inventory weren't, in your belief, part of what you were storing at Mar-a-Lago. What was planted, in other words. And he realized, I'm going to have to make these claims and I'm going to look like an idiot. Isn't there some way I could get out of telling you that? And, the special master, being a normal person, said, well, no, your whole case is, the warrant was unwarranted, but the warrant should never have been issued. Or they treated me badly, which isn't the thing, and that evidence was planted, or the stuff was declassified. So Deary said, well, tell me what was planted and tell me what was declassified. And then Trump realized, and his attorneys realized that we can't really do that without getting in more trouble. Isn't there some way we would not have to do that? And I guess this is what this is all about. Judge Cannon took the order and said, well, you're just a special master. You're just making recommendations to the court. And while it's normal 99 times out of 100 to take the special master's advice and implement it, and that's in fact the whole point of having a special master. If I wanted to micromanage this case, I would have kept it with me. But I appointed a special master. Well, I guess I should say, ordinarily, special masters are appointed because a court is saying, yeah, I don't want to be the one to micromanage this. Let's put a specialist on it who will take care of sorting this stuff out so that the court doesn't have to spend its time doing it, because it's complex and it will be the only thing we're able to do if we do it. Although, understood as part of that is it's the only thing we'll be able to do if we do it and do it properly. If we, bull our way through it, then I guess we can get it done really quickly. Like, what this requires is sorting through thousands and thousands of pages of documents and saying, this one says it's classified. Is it classified or not? Let's find out. This person says they have executive privilege over. Let's figure out whether there's any colorable claim here. This one, somebody says, was planted. Let's figure out whether that makes any sense, or set up a schedule for how we can even figure that out, whatever it is. And you sort the papers. You go through all of them. If you're willing to just say, I'll just take whatever Trump says as truth and just write an order that says that, well, then I guess you can make that order in 5 minutes. What do you want, Mr. President? And then I'll just sign the order. But anyway, she assigned it to a special master. Now, I guess ordinarily we were all supposed to think that she would assign it to a special master because she thought, A, that was necessary, and B, that would save the court time, and C, that she didn't really want to do this work. But as it turns out, she assigned a special master mostly because Trump said he wanted to have a special master. And Trump himself probably said he wanted to have a special master because Rudy Giuliani had a special master. How could Rudy Giuliani have a special master? And I'm more important than Rudy Giuliani. Where's my special master? Not really even, I don't think he was even really entertaining any thoughts about what does that mean, having a special master? Why would that be good? And his lawyers said, a special master wouldn't be a bad call. I mean, that will slow things down. Our best strategy as attorneys, we know this case is ordinarily unwinnable. Our best bet is to simply slow this down as much as possible and hope that I guess the best bet is then you run for president, and if you win, you pardon yourself and pardon all your friends and fire all the people at the Department of Justice that were conducting this investigation, and promote all the judges that helped you. And I don't know what you're going to do with judges that fought against you. I guess at that point you can just, I guess, have them dragged out back and have them shot, and then pardon yourself for that as well. But I don't want to suggest that. You can come up with that on your own. But all we want to do is waste time. So, all right, special master. I mean, ordinarily I don't care. I don't know why we would have a special master. There's lots of documents. You're a special guy. We can have a special master for you. And that's it. And then we knew in her order appointing the special master that she had reserved the right, and I guess all judges probably do. I don't know. I don't deal with special masters a whole lot. I don't deal with any of them. But I'm sure that it's a somewhat standard clause that, okay, well, I'm the judge in this case. Special master isn't the judge in this case. So I reserve the right to check things over and obviously rule in a different way if necessary, legally speaking, from what the special master provides. And everybody worried right away, oh, well, this is a kind of a weird case, and this is a weird judge, and what if she just says, what if the judge that becomes a special master, Deary, takes the thing seriously and handles the case as it ought to be handled, as he so far has done? Well, couldn't she just say, well, no, I'm going to run this corruptly and do it her way instead? And yeah, she could, and everybody kind of looked at it and said, well, but I mean, I guess probably she wouldn't. But, then about 25% of us said, she probably will. And then she did. So that's where we stand. Liz Dye writes more about it. In his objections, again, to Judge Deary's case management plan, Trump complained of being forced to say if any items in the inventory were planted, forcing him to give up the lie he's been flogging for weeks. Cannon nixed that provision of the order. Judge Deary ordered Trump to specify among the documents over which he's claiming executive privilege, which can't be released outside the executive branch, and which he'd like to shield within the executive branch, i.e. from the Justice Department. He even gave Trump leeway to do that. And let's see. This is not a distinction, though, that Trump's lawyers wanted to make, since claiming executive privilege as against the executive branch to thwart a criminal investigation is effing nuts. Judge Cannon, though, so it's a bit of a setup. Like, okay, you're going to make that claim? Let me see you do it. Show me exactly which you think need to be. What do you need to claim executive privilege from such that the current executive branch cannot see these documents? What is this privilege you're inventing? I'd rather not actually tell you. I think I just wanted to deal with it in theory. Well, no. But at any rate, yeah, this is not a distinction that Trump's lawyers wanted to make, since claiming executive privilege against the executive branch, especially to thwart a criminal investigation, is pretty unique, let's say. And in service of Trump's goal to drag this process out as long as possible, that is Judge Cannon, is not only has extended the deadlines into December. Remember that Judge Deary thought the whole special master process, if you apply yourself, could be done in late October or mid-October, as I recall. And Judge Cannon had said, well, maybe November. Now she says, well, maybe December on top of that, even though she's not doing it and she's handing it over to Deary. And now she's going to micromanage it on top of that. I guess that's why she wants to stretch it out in December. But she's relieved Trump of the obligation to begin rolling production as soon as possible. That is, once you clear things as not privileged, you can put them on the record or turn them over to the prosecution or produce all your, all the documents you're being asked by the prosecution to come up with. And he'd rather not give them anything, and the longer he takes to give them anything, the longer it'll take for them to charge him with anything. And so let's just do that. Let's see. I guess is this from her order? The court determines that the submission by plaintiff to defendant of one final comprehensive log, and remember here, the plaintiff do I have the case correct? I mean, he's not charged here, so he's suing to block this stuff. So he's the plaintiff in all this. And I know it came up in their first appearance in Cannon's court too. Like the Trump's team went and sat at the defense table because they view this whole thing as we're under attack. We're the defendant in all of this, but they're actually the plaintiff in these cases. The court determines that the submission by the plaintiff to defendant of one final comprehensive log is better suited to manage the process and resolve any disputes, she writes, explicitly linking the decision to the 11th Circuit's removal of classified documents from the process. All right, well, at any rate, yeah, so she's just saying rather than producing documents as they're cleared by Trump, in terms of what he's claiming about them, he wants to just wait until every page has to be classified into which category it's going into, and then we'll turn over our privilege log and whatever documents we're supposed to give you. Maybe. But then, the big problem with Trump is he keeps failing to produce the paper he's supposed to produce in every aspect of his life. So this will go on for some time. Liz characterizes it this way: just a total gift to Trump and a middle finger to the 11th Circuit. Unbelievable. And then she says she's done, but then she has one more tweet. And as Akiva M. Cohen points it, and maybe he'll have a thread on this as well, as he points out, Cannon put the kibosh on Deary's suggestion that a Rule 41 motion for return of property might go back to Magistrate Judge Reinhardt. She's keeping this whole thing in her own pocket. Thank you very much. And that's pretty interesting, too. So keeping the magistrate out of it, it's an interesting thing to do, to appoint a special master. Again, the only reason that they're ordinarily appointed is because this stuff requires too much work for the trial court to handle. But she's handling it anyway. So there's and of course, having negated all of his orders doesn't make any sense either. All right, well, let's see. What is, maybe does Cohen have a thread going on this thing? Oh, and it's fairly lengthy. Let's read through it here. Hey, litigation disaster tourists, he writes. Judge Luce Cannon is at it again, apparently completely unchastened by the shellacking she received from the 8th Circuit. I thought it was the 11th. And, I mean, it was the, but okay, maybe she was somehow, what would she be doing in the 8th Circuit? Nothing. Okay. And once again, handing Trump everything he asks for. And the entire opinion, I think, is only a couple of pages. We could sort through it. But anyway, Akiva Cohen takes us through it his way. Issue number 1, Cannon's order appointing Judge Deary directed him to verify that the government's detained property inventory was full and accurate. So Deary directed the parties to do that. Both parties. That is to say, yes, DOJ, double check, make sure that the inventory you gave us is complete. And Trump, make sure that the inventory you give us shows what you believe was and wasn't in the inventory, since you keep saying that evidence has been planted. I mean, you're not going to just want to sign off on their inventory, are you? Not just the government, but also Trump had to make clear whether he was contending the inventory contained any items that weren't seized from the property. Say under oath, in other words, that they were planted, MFR, I dare you, or omitted anything, or misdescribed anything. Luce Cannon did not like that, asking Trump to take positions under oath. No way. Look, I can understand saying he gets to revise objections if after reviewing the documents he realizes there's another objection to be made, but he doesn't have, saying that he doesn't have to take positions on this at all? How is Deary supposed to evaluate a privilege claim on a maybe fake document? That's a good question. Except it's not maybe fake, it's real. Anyway, this is a document that the FBI may or may not have planted, but which is also an executive privilege document that the FBI can't review. That's essentially what Trump is saying he wants to argue. And Deary's saying you can't because it doesn't make sense. And Cannon is saying, you can because I'm the judge. And that's it. That's going to be very confusing. Judge Deary's tight timelines? No. This thing is extended into mid-December. Rolling designations so that Trump would identify a batch of documents and the government could respond? Nope. The government gets 11,000 designations dropped on it all at once. And then it has 10 calendar days to identify, negotiate, and brief the special master on any disputes. There is literally no reason to do that except to burden the government and artificially advantage Trump. Her avoid confusion reasoning is a bad joke. Litigators know how to work rolling productions and deadlines. There wouldn't be any confusion. You work for a week, then you send what you've got done at the end of the week. Easy. Not confusing at all. But that wouldn't put the government at a disadvantage, so out it goes. Last, she really didn't like Dearie suggesting that the 41G motion should go to the magistrate that issued the warrant. I guess here are some highlighted screen grabs here. Once the court has reviewed the special master's recommendations and ruled on any objections thereto, the special master will, if necessary, consider plaintiff's motions for return of property under Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 41G. And then, let's see, what else here? As explained in the court's previous order, plaintiff properly brought this action in a district where plaintiff's property was seized. So, yeah, all right. Well, she's just basically saying, no, you're going to have to allow me, Judge Cannon, to rule, I guess, on all of these 41G motions, not the magistrate. Look, all of this is a sideshow, he concludes by saying, the documents that really impact the potential criminal charges are the classified documents she tried to stop the criminal investigators from reviewing, and she got reversed on that. But it is ridiculous. Okay. And then at the end he acknowledges, oh yes, it was the 11th Circuit, not the 8th Circuit. I don't know why I said that. Okay. Anyway, so that's, it's an exciting bunch of developments, don't you think? Let me put this away so that I can hand it over to you for your review later on. If you want to read the entirety of the order, it really is only 6 pages, but I don't know if you're going to get anything more out of it than what we were able to wring out of these 2 threads. It's just, generally speaking, not at all in keeping with the reason for having special master or any of the ordinary powers that you might give to a special master. It basically makes a joke of having appointed one in the first place, and Judge Dearie isn't going to like that a whole lot, but we'll see how he handles it, I guess, in the next couple of days. All right, let's see. Other important news. This one doesn't seem quite as important, but it is Friday. And I just wanted you to know that HuffPost knows that a life-size poop sculpture of Ron Johnson is touring around Milwaukee. I thought I might tell you that if you are in Milwaukee this weekend and the weather is nice and you want to see a poop sculpture of Ron Johnson, you'll have your chance. Honestly, I saw the picture of it, and it was sent on to me via Twitter. Let me jump back so that I can was it Lisa Iannucci who sent us this one? I think so. It didn't have the KITM hashtag on it. That's why. All right. Well, at any rate, I saw the picture that accompanies the story, and maybe you'll want to take a look at it too. I didn't read the headline before I saw the picture, and I said, oh, someone has made a poop sculpture of Jared Kushner. It looks like Jared Kushner. It kind of looks like Ron Johnson too. And there'd be no reason to tour Milwaukee with a poop sculpture. Well, there's rarely a reason to tour Milwaukee with a poop sculpture of anybody. But Ron Johnson would make a lot more sense than Jared Kushner in Milwaukee. Around here this weekend, I wouldn't recommend touring anything. It's going to be raining. I guess leftovers from the hurricane on its way up from Florida. And it's just bad weather for poop sculptures generally. I think you want dry weather when you're dealing with that. Do you want to know who's doing it or why? I mean, they're doing it because Ron Johnson is full of crap, I guess. And I don't know. I guess I could skim the article. I'll tell you who's doing it. It is progressive groups Next Gen PAC and Move On, all hosting events around the city with a 6-foot-tall, 80-pound, he's lost a lot of weight, statue, that's funny, instead of statue, of Johnson made out of dried cow manure. In case you were wondering who supplied the materials for that, it was Bossy, I guess. Anyway, there you have it. that's news. I just thought you might be interested in knowing that if you were looking for something to do in Milwaukee. There's other things to do. I guess speaking of, let's just stay on the scatological just for a moment. I wanted to make you aware of this the other day when I first heard of it, and I forgot, and Friday's as good a day as any to tell you. In Tennessee, I don't know if you know this, but some of their Republican lawmakers are stupid and gullible. And I just wanted to let you know that there are still, to this day, in America, people who are professionally in politics, electoral politics, so they're elected to the state legislature, still at this late date being fooled into mentioning in official proceedings that they are dead sure that they are in the public schools in whatever the hell state they're in this time, and this time was Tennessee. And I believe Tennessee has been through this already, by the way, which is amazing. Still convinced that there are kids identifying as animals who what they think is what furries are, and that's not what furries are, but never mind what furries are. Just know that it's not that. Anyway, I think you probably all know. And it's people who like to dress up in mascot looking, and they're not mascots to anything except weirdness, I suppose. But, sorry, furries. But anyway, that's not what furries are. And no kids are identifying as animals. And I don't think that's happening anywhere. And it doesn't matter. But at any rate, what they're definitely not doing is allowing kids to come to school and identify as animals. This is a shot at transgender issues, obviously. Identifying as animals and using litter boxes, much less litter boxes in the hallway as opposed to in the bathrooms. It was at least the last time they pretended it was happening in the bathrooms. But these two idiot members of the legislature are out there doing this again. I mean, it's been like 6 months since this thing was debunked, and these people are still doing it. And why they don't believe that the story is unbelievable in itself and check into it, I'll never know. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let me read you the story from Tennessee, just so that we can properly name and shame. I love the shorthand of it, name and shame, like shake and bake, but less delicious. The Tennessee lawmakers who are making this unforced error now, I believe I guess I could check the archives, but it's happening in all states. That is to say, there are people who have come to believe that it's happening in various states. But I really think, Tennessee is a great candidate for this, but I really think we've been through this already. I wonder if it's the same people. And I wonder whether it's just, well, now I'm invested in this lie and I have to stay invested, or whether it's a different set of people and they just don't communicate with one another. And maybe if you are embarrassed having this pointed out to you and you hear that somebody else is about to make the same mistake, you feel better if they make the same mistake too, so you don't correct them. I don't know. At any rate, look at all the, they're rolling some video from, on this, page here with the Tennessee story from down in Florida, a tremendous number of boats in the middle of the street in Fort Myers, Florida, I guess, thanks to the storm surge. Anyway, cleanup continues there, and, not much to report, I don't think, for the day on what's been happening down in Florida. We'll get a better view of things as power is restored and reportage comes out. But back to Tennessee, which so far, I think, has been largely spared from the hurricane, although it did seem to turn inland. So probably some heavy rain for everybody. But the main problem is that there are still idiot lawmakers that believe this furry BS. Tennessee lawmaker calls unproven claim, and even that headline I'll say is too weak, unproven claim of students being allowed to use litter boxes, a growing crisis. I mean, one thing it isn't. It's a growing crisis, quite honestly. It's the crisis, although it's a growing crisis of belief that this is happening. But yes, I think it's still too weak to say that it's unproven claims that she's latched onto. I mean, it's total lunacy is what you've latched onto, and you should just admit it. Anyway, in a video of a Tennessee legislature committee hearing, this is it's really a legislative committee hearing that has amassed thousands of views online. Two state lawmakers claim there are children in Tennessee who identify as, quote, furries, being allowed to use litter boxes at school. The lawmaker did not provide specifics or proof because there isn't any. And others in the meeting didn't ask for them because no one cares. But they say it's a worrying trend. And the worrying trend, of course, is having legislators, elected representatives who are too far gone to be able to recognize when they're being, pranked with this stuff. I have just one quick, she says, because I think she meant question. Do the charter schools allow, they're listening to testimony from a charter school official in Tennessee. And they say, I just got one question, basically. Do charter schools allow furries to come as furries to class, which is children identifying as cats or dogs? Asked very stupid Representative Mary Littleton, who, if you are in the Dixon, Tennessee area, shame on you. You're being very poorly represented by the idiot Republican Mary Littleton. She asked this of the Charter School Commission, and they gave a straight answer. Oh, no. But, they actually, it's very interesting. Maybe they didn't give a straight answer. That is to say, they played it straight as if they were being asked a real question, but they went on to say, oh, no, we don't do that. We follow all the regulations. We would never allow something like that. We don't have that. As opposed to saying, no, and no school ever would. I mean, you're getting your leg pulled by some prankster or another. You don't understand what you're asking. But this was debunked months ago. And, I guess you don't want to say you look like a total idiot, but you should certainly, in no uncertain terms, even if you want to help this legislator out, you should be saying what you're talking about is something that's circulated as a rumor for many months now online. And it's like basically the equivalent of an urban legend, except that it shouldn't even be an urban legend, because honestly, who would you tell this legend to that wouldn't, just stop talking to you or punch you in the face for lying to them? It's just that stupid. On its face, you should know you're being pranked. And the fact that you're not aware of it is frankly quite concerning. But I need money from you. So instead I'll say, no, we're not doing that. So it's summarized in this report here as they said they do not allow it. Like, the charter schools don't allow, but what about the other schools, right? Dun, dun, dun. This isn't even worthy of playing the sound effect. But Senator Janice Bowling, there's another one, of Tullahoma, maybe? Tennessee. I mean, I don't know how you say it, Tullahoma. But anyway, Janice Bowling, I guess, doubles the stupid by following up with more concerns. Unfortunately, I'm hearing this in my rural districts. Now, you only have one district, of course. What you mean is the rural areas of your district. And this is also, this is slander against rural America, quite honestly. Senator Janice Bowling, how dare you? Only rural people are too stupid to understand that there's none of this furry business going on anywhere, and that that's not even what furries are. Unfortunately, I'm hearing this in my rural districts where maybe schools are not fully disclosing that they are allowing children who identify as, and this gets even better. This one sent me howling when I heard it. They are allowing children who identify as snakes. Snakes? Who ever heard of that? And by the way, you know what? There's a huge growing concern with furry snakes in this country. What is it? How's the movie thing? I'm sick and tired of these furry snakes crapping on my plane. Doesn't have anything to do. Snakes. Who's a furry snake? Children who identify as snakes. And by the way, no, teacher, I'm not a boy or a girl. I'm a snake. And everyone knows snakes are furry and use litter boxes. So get out of my way. Like, what? Children who identify as snakes, cats, whatever, they are providing litter boxes, Bowling said. So I thank you, Representative Littleton, for addressing this growing crisis. And by the way, is this a joint committee of some kind? There's senators in there, there's representatives in there, there's idiots in there, there's snakes in there, there's litter boxes in there, and nobody will tell them. You're falling for a terrible, stupid hoax. At minimum, if you want to be kind to them. Researchers who study the furry fandom say they have heard of these rumors at times over the past decade, but they have been spreading more this past year because people are dumber, and Donald Trump is to blame for that. The idea of little kids identifying as furries, this doesn't seem to happen with any regularity, said Courtney Plant, an associate professor at Bishop's University. This university professors are having to waste their time on this. Plant, an expert in fandoms, which is, well, not phantoms, fandoms, the things about which people might become fans, right? And that's what the furry thing is. And I don't really have to spend any time discussing it, but I'll start by saying it's not children and they're not going to school this way. And it's not about people who are like, I am a cat, so I need a litter box. It's about people who like dressing up in these materials and pretending to be, a character, but an anthropomorphic character that more than likely uses a toilet, if anything. But anyway, Plant, an expert in fandoms, and his research partner, Sharon Roberts, an associate professor at the University of Waterloo, I guess we're having to go abroad for these things, have spent more than a decade interviewing people, tens of thousands of people, in fact, I guess, because the way they wrote this. By the way, I'm reading from WKRN News, I guess, WKRN.com. So some editor let this go through this way. We have spent more than a decade interviewing people, tens of thousands of people, who identify as furries around the world. The idea that furries are asking for treatment because they identify as these animals is simply just not supported with research, Roberts said. I can't believe there had to be research. Bowling and Littleton did not respond to emails and calls requesting comment or an interview. Of course, now they're embarrassed. Also, the Tennessee Department of Education did not respond to an email asking whether children identifying as furries are being given special accommodations in schools. And that's probably because we've answered this 100 times. This is Tennessee. They ask us every day. And it's not happening. I refer the honorable gentleman to the answer I gave some moments ago. However, these claims reached an East Tennessee school district in April. I knew we had already been in Tennessee. In response, the Hawkins County School District posted on Facebook calling these claims rumors and a ridiculous notion. That's good. Similar concerns in other states have also been fact-checked and debunked. Yet, in the meeting, Bowling said she hopes there is a reawakening in our Department of Education. Plant and Roberts said the furries they have studied are older than 18 and typically are in their 20s, and there are a lot of misconceptions about the furry community. Are you going to explain furries for real now? It looks like it's coming to the end of the article, so it'll be mercifully brief if they do it at all. There is this belief that if you are a furry, you are a person who thinks you are an animal, which is not correct. Yay, Plant said. That makes as much sense as saying that if you wear a football jersey, you think you are Tom Brady. That actually makes considerably more sense than the furry thing. It's really by saying it makes as much sense as saying that if you wear a football jersey, you think you're a football, quite honestly. I mean, but I guess they're right. It makes more sense to say that, but that's somehow believable. Like I identify as Tom Brady is less crazy than I identify as a snake and a furry one at that. And I got to use a litter box. And how do they even get to the litter box? Like slither? Anyway, Plant compared it to dressing up as a favorite superhero for a comic book convention, which is pretty close, I think, to what they're talking about, or a convention or an event, and said furries rarely put on their costumes outside of a special event or convention. In fact, he said his team's research has found that the majority of furries don't own a fur suit. About a third of furries occasionally put on a costume to dress up as a character, but the fact that they think that they are a non-human animal is not what makes you a furry. That makes you somebody who needs psychiatric care and whatever. But anyway, it's not happening. Even among furries, actual furries, it's not happening. And I assure you, they all use the bathroom. I assure you, I make a guess that they all do, because who would allow furry conventions if they were pooping all over the floors in the hallways in the hotels that host them? And the answer is probably nobody. Anyway, Tennessee continues to have this problem, and it should be stamped out at this point. But hey, there's stupid news everywhere. As I posted in the Morning Post yesterday, or today's Morning Post. Yesterday, everybody was freaking out. I guess they're still doing it now because people are slow to take up these stories. But everybody was freaking out because, I don't know, something happened. Lizzo, who is an international star of some note that does things that are probably pretty good because she's popular. I don't know. Anyway, in addition to the various things that she does that I don't know about, and I think she's a recording artist. I hope. Jeez. Anyway, in addition to that, she's apparently an accomplished flute player, flautist, as they used to say when people understood what that meant and didn't laugh. Anyway, and she's pretty good too, because I heard her play. And I heard her play because she went to the Smithsonian to, I don't know why she actually went. I mean, initially. But at any rate, she went, and the upshot of her having gone there, ooh, there's a mosquito in here. Should I chase it down and see if I can smack it out of midair and make little clap noises on it? All right, well, I'm not going to be able to get it, I don't think. I need my Mr. Miyagi chopsticks in order to catch this guy. Anyway, I don't know what prompted the thing. Maybe I'll find out if I read an article about it. But who wants to read an article about this? The point is, she went to the Smithsonian, where she visited a rare instrument collection. Okay? And apparently, it's one of the broader and more complete rare instrument collections in the world. And in fact, includes what I believe I saw them state was the largest flute collection in the world. I'm not certain that the rare instrument collection is the largest in the world, but it's a pretty good bet if it includes the world's largest flute collection. And among the flutes that they've collected, for whatever reason, National Flute, Strategic Reserve, things like that. Very big patriotic symbol in this country, of course, from the artwork Spirit of 76, in which for whatever reason, it's always has to be wounded guys are marching around carrying a Revolutionary War era American flag and as a small fife and drum corps, a corps of three, one flag, one drum, one fife. They're marching around, showing their resilience, presumably because they've been wounded and are willing to play the fife anyway. So flute-like instruments with a long history as part of our heritage here in the United States of America. Amen. Something, something. So now we have a flute collection in case the enemy comes over. The British are coming again, and we all need flutes. Well, a fife is different, but I'm sure there's some of those in the collection too. Anyway, among these flutes is a crystal flute, which I didn't know that they made, but they do. And 0% of my life prior to this week was occupied with the materials that they use to make flutes. But now it turns out they make them out of crystal. Wonderful. I guess it's not the best material because I suppose it can break if you drop it. And, metal doesn't. So People are using the metal flutes these days. Anyway, this crystal flute is important not just because it's crystal, not just because Lizzo played it, but because it at one point belonged to James Madison. Yeah, all right, great, right? President of the United States, wonderful. Founding father, took a lot of notes at the Constitutional Convention. None of the notes mentioned that he had a crystal flute, though, so I don't think. At least none of them that made it into the history books that I had to read as a kid. So how long have I known that James Madison had a crystal flute? 2 days. Anyway, how long has the rest of the country known? 2 days. But what's happening is conservatives are angry that Lizzo played James Madison's flute because reasons. And apparently no one has ever played it, which tells you, well, a number of things. First of all, James Madison, what were you doing? If you didn't even play the flute, why did you have a crystal flute? I don't know. Did he buy it? Did somebody give it to him? I don't know. I don't think they answer that question. Why did he never play it? Or maybe nobody's played it since James Madison. I don't know. I don't know how they know that. I don't know why they have the flute. I don't know what it matters. I'm sure that they thought it was interesting at the Smithsonian to have a James Madison anything. And where should we keep it? With the James Madison stuff or with the flutes? Put it with the flutes. Nobody's playing it. Put it there. Lizzo played it. She went to the Smithsonian, and then I guess I don't know where they keep the flutes. But they ended up, I think, in the Library of Congress, where they had this nice room with lots of echo, and she played beautifully this flute. And then later on, at a concert that she was giving, which is what I think was going on, because I think she's a recording artist, because I'm old and I don't know what's going on, but I've heard her name. I know that she's a famous person. And anyway, she, I think, had a concert. She played this flute at the concert. And I think what's making the conservatives wig out about this is Lizzo is not a conservative dresser in concert. And so they were like, she's, scantily clad and playing this flute. And it's James Madison's flute. So therefore, this is disrespectful. No one ever knew James Madison had a flute. And she didn't say anything about James Madison. Like, this song is dedicated to crapping on the memory of James Madison, whose flute I'm playing. What an idiot. He let me play this flute. I hate him. I don't know. She may even have credited the Smithsonian. It makes no difference. They're angry because she's playing James Madison's flute and she's, she doesn't dress like they hoped that she would, or some reason, or they disrespect her talent. I don't know. Anyway, nobody knew that James Madison had this flute before. Nobody knew that the Smithsonian collected flutes before. By the way, I thought what was going to anger the conservatives about this was that we were spending taxpayers' money on maintaining the world's largest collection of flutes. But no, they're angry because, By the way, have I mentioned that Lizzo is black? Maybe that's the problem. I guess that's part of it as well. Anyway, did I not? I mean, everybody probably knows that. I don't know. That's why I didn't mention it. It's like, not because I don't see color. I do see color and everybody else sees it too. So you already knew that. But I don't know. Maybe you, like me, don't know who she is and you're wondering why. I mean, I guess they could have, I could envision conservatives getting mad about a white woman who doesn't wear enough clothing for in their opinion. Although if it's a conservative woman, they love commenting on our Republican women politicians are so hot, but I don't know. But they wear clothes, so there is that. I don't know. Anyway, that's what was happening yesterday. Again, though, it is amazing that how much do we spend on maintaining the world's largest collection of flutes, or among the largest, I assume, if not the largest collection of instruments, rare or otherwise. Like, I don't know. Really? It seems like I see the value of it in a way, but not that much. Anyway, the Library of Congress put something out about it on Twitter, and I guess they were very earnestly answering these things by saying, well, for those concerned about the flute, like, oh, what about the safety of the flute? What if Lizzo, jumping around on stage with, I don't know whether she was jumping around or not, drops the flute and ruins it, cracks James Madison's flute? And it was like, again, like it doesn't really damage the reputation of James Madison. If that flute is destroyed, nothing happens. I mean, like nobody knew about this thing. I was mocking it yesterday, tweeting all day. I remember as a kid, we used to stand every day in class and pledge allegiance to that flute. The flute was what it was all about. The Continental Army, after ramming the ramparts and taking over the airports, they made sure nobody played that flute. And now Lizzo sullies their memory. Anyway, for those concerned about the flute, the Library of Congress wants you to know, the music division curators made sure it could be played without damage. Like, I guess if they're trying to come up with it, well, it's not that she's scantily clad or that she's black, it's that it could damage the flute. Well, they have museum curators. They know what they're doing, and if they thought it was going to wreck the flute, they wouldn't have anybody play it. But they go on to say this sort of thing is not all that unusual. In fact, some of the library's priceless instruments were donated with the stipulation that they remain functional and be played. And it's interesting, too, that they are tweeting as the Library of Congress. I mean, I guess that explains why they ended up playing in the Library of Congress if it was not Smithsonian, but maybe the Library of Congress. I don't know if it's a branch of the Smithsonian. I don't know if the Smithsonian's a branch of the Library of Congress. But that's a good process question. Someone should look it up, or someone who knows should tell me. Speaking of which, I have some knowledge of that was shared with me by several of the listeners of the show that I will clear up some other stupid procedural note that we had from earlier in the week. When I say stupid, I mean I'm embarrassed to be fascinated by it, but I am fascinated by it, and I hope you will be too, because I love those sorts of little details. Anyway, that's what the Library of Congress Music Division has to say for itself, that they have this huge collection, and some of the donated instruments are donated with the stipulation that they remain functional and be played. So somebody's got to play it. Might as well be Lizzo, right? Well, anyway, I'll include this tweet for you because you'll also be able to then hear the audio of her playing this. I mean, she's a for real player. There's no joke here. And you'll get to hear some of this beautiful playing inside the Library of Congress. What else is in this tweet thread? You didn't think Lizzo played that antique flute on stage without practicing first, did you? The library wants you to know. She visited the library Monday and played several of the flutes in our collection, which is the largest in the world. There you are. And they had a hashtag for it and everything. Lizzo at LOC, Library of Congress. See and hear more from her visit at their blog. It's a link there. A flute Lizzo played in the main reading room Monday with permission from some lucky researchers who were there. Looks similar to the crystal one she had at her concert, but it was actually plexiglass. It is also very rare and was manufactured when the material was first invented. How fascinating. And there is a lot that's fascinating about this whole thing, including the fact that we have this collection. Anyway, there was another observation that I thought was very interesting, as long as we're on the subject, and we are on this subject, no doubt about it, from David Weiner, W-E-I, in case you're wondering about the spelling, E-I, not an I-E, Weiner. At any rate, what does he have to say about, I mean, I don't know who he is. He's blue check marked, so he really is that guy, whoever that guy is. The funny thing is, he says, the legend, the quote-unquote legend behind this flute is that James Madison's violent alcoholic stepson, whose gambling and crimes put his mother in poverty, left it to a doctor to pay off his medical debt. Such a pristine history. How dare Lizzo play it? So, if true, also a good point. Like, all right, it's really not that big of a deal. Not to mention the fact that the flute plays no part in America's history, as far as I'm aware. If there was any reference anywhere, you know what, James Madison, among other things, kept notes on the Constitutional Convention, President of the United States, avid flute player, avid flute collector, loved more than anything his crystal flute. Maybe there would be something there, but even if that was the case, there would still be nothing. All right. So there we are. I just wanted to catch you up on this because somebody over the weekend probably will say something about this flute to you. Other things are much more important, like that poop sculpture. Again, touring Milwaukee. Don't miss it. Let's see. Other things to share with you that I think would be, we're going to be able to fit them in here. Let me just say this. How about this? The Washington Post reporting on the story I told you yesterday, I think, or maybe the day before, about Tucker Carlson going on the air and speculating about who sabotaged the Nord Stream pipeline. Philip Bump writes that Russian TV is very excited about Tucker Carlson's, written in his name transcribed into Cyrillic here, Tucker Carlson's Nord Stream theory. They were very happy to hear it. And I think Greg told you that they were, or was it something else that they were spoofing? Anyway, oh yeah, right, the draft thing. Anyway, if you're curious, here is how to transliterate Tucker Carlson into Russian, and it's put in the headline as well. I know this because on Wednesday, those characters appeared on Russian TV over and over again as broadcasters blessed by authorities in that country eagerly embraced Carlson's effort to pin the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage on President Biden's administration. If you are less dedicated to tracking rhetoric that might be embraced by Russian President Vladimir Putin, you may have missed Carlson's riff on Tuesday. You didn't, because I played it for you. The Washington Post's Aaron Blake walked through it in detail, but the short version is that Carlson suggested that the damage to the 2 underwater gas pipelines in Europe was possibly a function of U.S. saboteurs, which, if true, kind of awesome. Anyway, there's no evidence of this, of course. Carlson leveraged statements from administration officials opposing the activation of the pipeline to suggest that they had committed to destroying the pipeline. But the point, as usual, was to frame the actions of Biden and his aides as inherently dangerous for the American people. In this case, because there would be a cascading effect after Russia retaliated. You can see the appeal for the Russian state. First, that the damage to the pipeline, an action for which Russia is certainly a more than viable suspect, if not a preeminent one, would get pinned on its archenemy. And second, that Russia is presented not as it is, weak and hobbled by Ukraine's counteroffensive, but instead as it sees itself, an actor equivalent to the United States that can impose pain where and when it wishes. Again, Carlson's intent was almost certainly centered on more on impugning Biden than elevating Putin. But, you know, enemy of your enemy and all that. And so the clip from Tucker Carlson entered heavy rotation as captured by the Internet Archive. There he was, just after noon, Moscow time, shown on Channel 1's news program. A couple of screen grabs from that are presented here. There he was again on Russia's Russia 1 program, 60 Minutes. And later on back on Channel 1, and again and again and again, hour after hour, they kept playing it over and over. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Yeah, I may have spoken on my way into the break here, but basically just that the fact was that they were documenting how many times in a single day they played Tucker Carlson's clip over and over again, and it is a lot, and I didn't count the number. But the main point here, and I really should have snuck this in before the break, was Bump is kind here for some reason, more kind than he has to be, to Tucker Carlson by saying that it's not Tucker Carlson's fault, for whatever reason, that Russian TV looped his segment into their broadcast. He didn't make these claims to get airtime in Moscow, it's safe to assume. He has enough people tuning into his show here in the United States. But it is telling. The networks on which the clips aired are state-run, meaning that the rhetoric Carlson offered was seen as a boon to Putin's propaganda. And again, there's no evidence that the scenario Carlson outlines is accurate. There are probably better than even odds that the sabotage will be eventually linked back to Russia itself. In a statement on Thursday, NATO asserted that the deliberate attack on member state infrastructure, not this attack, this isn't member state, but an attack on member state infrastructure, say in retaliation, would be met with a united and determined response, whatever that might mean, an announcement of force that would be awkward if its most important member were found to be at fault. That would be us. The question really isn't why Russia would embrace unfounded allegations against the Biden administration that cast Russia as the victim. That's obvious. The question is more why Fox News embraces it. Though that, too, is fairly obvious. And I guess illustrated by Julia Davis's embedded tweet here. Meanwhile, in Russia, every state TV program is feasting on Tucker Carlson's accusations that the Biden administration is somehow involved in causing the Nord Stream damage. Military experts loved Tucker's idea about cutting undersea internet cables and said, sure, why not? And we are offered the clip to watch. Tulsi Gabbard also appearing in some of these segments, by the way. Just thought I'd let you know what that idiot is up to these days. So, just as a follow-up effort to what I told you the other day about Tucker, know that the Russians enjoyed watching it tremendously. All right. Let's see. Other things to share with you. Oh, yes. Well, there is news I can do very quickly in Joan's absence earlier this week. We didn't get a chance to discuss very much what was happening with the budget and the CR. It is today the last day of the federal fiscal year, so there has to be something in place, or else there's a quote-unquote, anyway, shutdown. Sometimes these things happen where they let the CR lapse and take care of it on Monday, so that the government is technically sort of kind of shut down over the weekend, but it's the weekend, so it doesn't make as much difference. Anyway, there was a CR passed in the Senate with a House vote, as they say, on deck for today. So I guess everything is probably expected to sail through without too much trouble. Let me read you from roll call what happened with the CR in the Senate so that we're up to speed on things. Stopgap funding bill passes Senate. Host has to click X on 5 pop-up ads to finish reading headline. All right. Stopgap funding bill passes Senate. House vote on deck Friday. President Joe Biden. Did you know he was the president? Thank you for putting that in the subheader here. Top lawmakers suggest, there's President Joe Biden, comma, top lawmakers, the both of them, suggest more funding may be provided for hurricane aid. Sounds like a good idea. In a post-election omnibus package. Well, they're going to need money sooner than that, of course. But now I guess you're supposed to lay it out and maybe we'll reimburse you later. But interesting. Yeah, it's a pretty clear admission. They're not going to be coming back anytime soon. It's election season is in full swing. They're not going to be back in October to fix this thing, maybe November. All right. By the way, lots of people passing around notes that reminded everybody that Ron DeSantis, who is now, as we learned, behaving himself because there was a hurricane in Florida and he needs money from the federal government, and conducting himself like a normal governor for the moment so that he can get this money. But everybody is reminding everybody who will listen that when Ron DeSantis was in Congress, he cheerfully and enthusiastically opposed Hurricane Sandy relief for the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut metropolitan area. And we'll suffer nothing for it because that's the way Democrats handle things. But there you have it. In MAGA world, that was genius. Anyway, where were we? Roll call. Yes, David Lehrman and Aidan Quigley reporting on the CR passing in the Senate. Passed on Thursday, sending to the House a bill that would avoid a partial government shutdown next week and boost aid to Ukraine. Why a partial government shutdown? Not just because it's the weekend, but just to remind you of the dynamics of the way these things work. You face shutdown if the separate appropriations bills for all the different functions of government, and I forget every year how many there actually are. Traditionally, it's in the neighborhood of 12, but they divide all the various government departments and functions up into 12 different appropriations bills. If you pass them all before September 30th, then you're just fine. You move on and the government functions smoothly and moves from one budget to the next. If you fail to pass any one of them, you are looking at a partial government shutdown. If you fail to pass all of them, you're looking at a complete shutdown. The CR, usually, you understand that you've heard about those enough that you know that that's the stopgap measure, but something that just simply continues funding at the current levels for some defined number of days or until some date certain, to give you more time to finish up the appropriations bills for those areas. But basically, if you did 11 of the 12 bills and you didn't get to the one that funds the Department of Flutes, whichever department that would be, let's see, Library of Congress. I mean, I don't know. I guess if it's Library of Congress, that might even be the legislative branch appropriations bill. I don't know where they fit in all of this. Anyway, that one usually doesn't suffer too much. They pass that one all the time because that's them. But anyway, let's say that happens and you didn't pass legislative branch appropriations. the partial government shutdown would be September 30th comes and goes, midnight strikes, and all the other 11 departments get to go ahead because they have their budgets. They don't all have to be passed, but the ones that haven't been passed would require a continuing resolution to go forward, or else there would be a partial government shutdown. Everything runs except the Department of Flutes and the legislative branch. And that means their paychecks and their staff paychecks and the cafeterias and I guess the Library of Congress too. And a number of other functions. And sometimes they're usually conglomerate packages. So there's always, legislative branch appropriations usually stands apart, but the Department of Education has some other stuff thrown in. It's not simply department by department. Anyway, but that's the point. Anything that hasn't had an appropriations bill passed would be temporarily, partial, would be the shutdown, the partial shutdown that we're talking about. So if it's 6 of the bills, if it's 1 of them, if it's 11 out of 12, if it's 10 out of 11, whatever the number may be, that part of the government that doesn't have a bill passed would shut down. It's a, reasonably sensible way of approaching things, except for the fact that they don't finish their work. Anyway, so this bill, the CR, will avoid a partial government shutdown next week and would boost aid to Ukraine. The 72-25 vote capped days of behind-the-scenes negotiations over last-minute concerns as senators work to secure the unanimous consent required to speed up final passage by midnight Friday when current funding runs out and the new fiscal year begins. I wonder whether they had to get that to move to a motion to proceed, or was it a unanimous consent request to, maybe they've just finished the text of the bill and ordinarily it would have to be referred to committee and lay over for a day, et cetera, but instead they waived all of that by unanimous consent. So I guess they did. Even the 25 people voting against it were willing to let that happen. I'm glad we came to a timely conclusion and didn't go right up to the brink and risk a shutdown, Majority Leader Charles E. Schumer said on the floor before the vote, although they really did because they only handed it to the House on Friday, and that's today, and that's the last day. So it's kind of right up to the brink. They're just glad that they went first and didn't have to go second, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, the House planned to take up the bill on Friday morning, a congressional aide said. House Republican leaders were urging members to vote against the bill, but the effort was unlikely to derail passage in the Democrat-controlled chamber. A final hurdle was cleared when President Joe Biden issued an amended disaster declaration for Alaska, which suffered massive flooding and landslides this month after Typhoon Merbok hit in the western part of the state. We did mention that they had been hit by a typhoon recently. Biden agreed to provide federal funding without any state matching requirement, as Alaska lawmakers had sought. In line with the cost-sharing waivers the administration granted Puerto Rico after Hurricane, which one was it? Fiona hit. The initial declaration had required a 25% match. Senator Dan Sullivan of Alaska said Thursday that he would lift his hold on the continuing resolution since Biden had granted his request for full federal funding. What a nice guy. Sullivan and the rest of the state's delegation had been pressing the administration for days on the matter, with Sullivan unleashing a tweet storm Tuesday, but you missed it because crystal flute, poop statue, who knows what else might have gotten in the way, furries. I don't know. I may stop reading this because it's not terribly interesting, not like crystal flute poop statue interesting, but also it keeps jumping around because of the way they serve up pop-up ads. But I guess I'm sort of interested in, all right, well, what was all the nonsense going around about there? Some of this stuff is small bore stuff and didn't really rise to the surface. Let's see, Sullivan and the rest of the state's delegation, and that's another senator and one member of the House, and now it's the new member of the House who was just elected in the special election, who likes fish, whose name I can't recall yet because she's just so brand new, but if Greg were here, he'd know. But we're all excited about how pro-fish she is. Anyway, they all, I guess, felt the same way. Are the suffering and needs of Alaska natives and rural Alaskans less deserving of federal support than our fellow Americans in Puerto Rico? Sullivan wrote. Well, no. That's why you got all the things that you were asking for. And by the way, I guess you should be thanking the Democrats for doing it, because they could have put the screws to you, because I bet Alaska wasn't there for Hurricane Sandy. But anyway, maybe they were, because they frequently get, and Don Young was a bit of a log roller anyway, so he might have been happy to do it. The spending measure would extend current funding until December 16th, by which time lawmakers hope to pass a final fiscal 2023 appropriations omnibus package. That would be all of the 12 bills that they didn't pass yet rolled up into one. You hear that happen all the time. The measure also includes about $17 billion in emergency spending, mostly to bolster Ukraine in its battle against a Russian invasion. I don't know if you heard, but that's a problem over there. Hurricane aid is included here. The stopgap would also inject nearly $19 billion into FEMA, Maine Disaster Relief Fund, as Florida tries to recover from Hurricane Ian, and Puerto Rico seeks to rebuild its electricity grid after extensive hurricane damage on the U.S. territory. That's a very diplomatic way of putting it, because they could have said, well, Florida tries to recover from Hurricane Ian, and Puerto Rico seeks to recover from Hurricane, what was the name of it again? Fiona. Except, no, they're still trying to recover from the hurricanes of past years as well, that destroyed the electrical grid there several years ago. And Puerto Rico has struggled island-wide with its electricity ever since, and was really struggling beforehand anyway. Not that we shouldn't have been investing in fixing it, hurricane or not, but it was interesting the way they put that, not, taking the time to note that they had been neglected in this responsibility by the Trump administration for several years in a row, as well as needing more help to deal with the latest hurricane damage. Anyway, Senate Appropriations Chairman Pat Leahy said on the floor that the cash infusion would bring FEMA's disaster relief fund up to roughly $35 billion, though more for that agency and others may be considered in the months ahead. That is to say, after the election. Earlier, Senate Appropriations Ranking Member Richard Shelby of Alabama told reporters that he hated pop-up ads and hated when they moved the text around while you were reading it. Told reporters that additional funding to help recover from Ian and other disasters could be considered as part of the fiscal 23 omnibus package in the lame duck session. Senate Homeland Security Appropriations Subcommittee Ranking Member Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia said a further FEMA damage assessment would be necessary before more money is appropriated. So we got to have a report first. They are really going to need it, she said. There's a lot of money in a disaster relief fund right now, especially turning the corner into next year, but I don't know. They have to assess the damage. Speaking to reporters after a briefing at FEMA headquarters on Thursday, Biden said, we may need more hurricane recovery funds. Probably true. Let's see. Senator Mike Brown, as he says, of Indiana, said his concerns over allowing a swift vote were resolved. He'd wanted to offer an amendment to require notification to Congress when enough states have crossed the threshold to call a convention to consider constitutional amendments mandating balanced budgets and term limits for Congress. You imagine holding up disaster relief for this? But yeah, I was going to shut down the government unless we get an amendment saying, I want an amendment requiring notification to Congress when enough states have crossed this threshold to call a convention. Well, read a effing newspaper, Mike. How about that? There's your notification. When enough states do it, the people who are interested in having a convention will say, aha, now we got it. It's time for a convention. But Mike Braun would like an engraved effing invitation and was going to close down the government unless he got an amendment vote on, I want special notice to Congress. Like, you'll know. They'll tell you. Anyway, Brown backed off in exchange for floor time to discuss his proposal. I'm a big idiot, and I want everyone to hear me say it, but I'm not going to close down the government for it. I'm getting 10 minutes to talk about it because we've already worked out the deal, he told reporters after the deal was struck. The deal is we'll all read the effing newspaper together. A drag queen will read us the newspaper at the library. How about that? At the Library of Congress while Lizzo plays the flute. Stupid idiot. We as a party have to be for something that we stand. That's such a dumb thing to hold out for. But all right, it was in the box. Campaign in a Box said you're supposed to hold out for a constitutional convention about balanced budget and term limits. By the way, he'll ignore term limits. I don't know how long he's been there, but I'm sure whenever the term limit time would come up for him, he'll be like, well, I still need to stay here and work for term limits. We as a party have to be for something that we stand for, and we got to all be willing to pay for it without borrowing from future generations, which we're currently doing, which has nothing to do with the Constitutional Convention thing he was holding out for. Just more stuff that was in the box. Borrowing from future generations. Why are you saying that? I thought you were holding out for a Constitutional Convention. Notice that there would be a Constitutional Convention, like they wouldn't tell you guys. And that was your issue. Yes, but this was also in the box, so I thought I would read it. I got 10 minutes, and I only have 1 minute of thoughts on the Constitutional Convention thing. So I'll read you about borrowing from future generations. Brown said his and Sullivan's holds were the last two obstacles to a time agreement needed to facilitate final passage. So they weren't really holding the bill. They were just saying we will withhold our unanimous consent for the time agreement unless we get what we want. I see. So, there is no such thing as a hold anyway, so it's always just whatever your objection is. That's the hold. Everyone wants to get out of here on time, and the hurricane is coming up this direction, Brown said. Everybody'd like to get back home. Oh, that's an interesting twist. Have your flight delayed out of Washington because the hurricane gets here. The biggest obstacle to passage was cleared earlier this week when West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin abandoned his effort to attach a measure aimed at expediting federal permitting for energy development projects. That was the big obstacle for a while. Democratic leaders had agreed to take up the permitting bill as part of a deal to win Manchin's support last month for a major climate change, healthcare, and tax package. But his proposal faced attacks from both parties and lacked the 60 votes needed to win approval. He was supposed to go get those. Passage of stopgap funding will be the last major legislation to clear Congress before it adjourns for lawmakers to campaign for re-election. While the House isn't scheduled to return until after November elections, the Senate schedule calls for reconvening in October. Schumer said Wednesday that schedule remains in effect, mostly so the Senate can take up its annual defense authorization bill. But Republicans have suggested that they do not intend to return next month. Oh, okay. So confirm some judges then by unanimous consent. That's not happening, said Minority Whip John Thune. I think he's spitballing there, Thune said of Schumer's scheduling plan. I think that's the official posture, but I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe not. Thune said the defense bill, when considered later this year, would be a vehicle for bipartisan energy permitting measures. So I guess that's the next chance for, what's his name to make trouble. Oh, yes, Manchin. All right, so that's where we stand legislatively. And it's important to know all of that. And it's important to know how dumb and what a distraction Mike Brown's whole existence actually is. But let's see. What else can you do with that? I don't know. Not too much more to report on that. Let's see what else is here. This has been something of interest for the past couple of days, and I guess it's expanded in its scope. Politico reporting under this headline, justices, that is Supreme Court justices, shield spouses' work from potential conflict of interest disclosures. Just the other day, we were hearing about, we didn't mention it on the air, but Clarence Thomas apparently neglecting is maybe the most diplomatic word, although I don't really care for the diplomacy of making Clarence Thomas comfortable, but neglected to report some tremendous amount of money, I think like $700,000 worth of work that Ginny Thomas had been compensated for, like a significant chunk of change. And, I just didn't tell anybody about that. Hey, that's weird, and her work is like super conflict of interest. Anyway, apparently, lots of people have this problem. Ginny Thomas, Jane Roberts, and Jesse Barrett's clients, I guess they all have clients. I don't know what they do, but they have clients. And they remain a mystery, fanning fears of outside influences. Wonder what that could be about. Now, remember, of course, that Amy Coney Barrett's husband, I don't know what he does for a living, but apparently his clients remain a mystery. But remember also that the nature, this was a subject of some of the questioning during her confirmation hearing, the nature of her religious beliefs are such that she believes in, I don't know what the hell they would call it, and they have a terminology for it. Maybe it's mentioned in the article, but she believes, quite literally, in the subservience of the wife in the household dynamic, and that essentially she serves. Sure, she's a Supreme Court justice. She's at the pinnacle of her career. She serves more or less at the pleasure of her husband, who indulges her to allow her to have this little fun activity outside of the house. But all the decisions are made by the man. So I guess that might mean he might just say, well, why don't you enjoy your hobby? You go make the decisions the way you want to make them. Don't listen to me about these. I don't care. Or he could say, I have an opinion about this case, and I think this is how you should rule. And I wonder whether that would work in their household. I don't know. Anyway, Politico reporters Haley Fuchs, Josh Gerstein, and Peter Canelos on this piece. A year after Amy Coney Barrett joined the Supreme Court, the boutique Indiana firm South Bank Legal opened its first ever Washington office in Penn Quarter, a move the firm hailed in a 2021 press release as an important milestone. The head of the office, Jesse M. Barrett, is the justice's husband, whose work is described by the firm as white-collar criminal defense, internal investigations, and complex commercial litigation. South Bank Legal, which lists fewer than 20 lawyers, has boasted clients across virtually every industry: automobile manufacturers, global banks, media giants, among others. They have included over 25 Fortune 500 companies and over 15 in the Fortune 100, according to the firm's website. But if anyone wants to find out whether Jesse Barrett's clients have a direct interest in cases being decided by his wife, they're out of luck. In the Supreme Court's notoriously porous ethical disclosure system, Barrett not only withholds her husband's clients, but redacted the name of South Bank Legal itself in her most recent disclosure. Over the past year, Virginia Thomas, known as Ginny, has gotten significant attention for operating a consulting business that reportedly includes conservative activist groups with interest in Supreme Court decisions as clients. Her husband, Justice Clarence Thomas, has chosen not to reveal any of his wife's clients, let alone how much they contributed to the Thomas family coffers, dating back to when her consulting business was founded. We've never known. But a Politico investigation shows that potential conflicts involving justices' spouses extend beyond the Thomases. Chief Justice John Roberts' wife, Jane Roberts, has gotten far less attention, but she is a legal headhunter at the firm McRae, which represents high-powered attorneys in their efforts to secure positions in wealthy firms, typically for a percentage of the first year's salary she secures for her clients. A single placement for a superstar lawyer can yield up to $500,000 or more for the firm. Mark Jungers, a former managing partner at Major, Lindsay and Africa, that's the name of the firm that employed Jane Roberts as a legal recruiter before she moved to McRae, told Politico the firm hired her hoping it would benefit from her being the Chief Justice's wife, in part because her network is his network and vice versa. So in other words, all of his clerks get placed in these jobs. Anyway, Roberts lists his wife's company on his ethics form, but not which lawyers and law firms. We had to have a new picture here, so all the text moved. Sorry. Roberts lists his wife's company, but not which lawyers and law firms hire her as a recruiter, even though her clients list include firms that have done Supreme Court work, according to multiple people with knowledge of the arrangement with those firms. By the way, how do you like that? You're arguing before the Chief Justice, and maybe you find yourself in an area where you might have a disagreement with the Chief Justice's assessment of things, and you need to tell him on behalf of your client, but you're also up for a brand new job, and his wife holds the keys to that job. How do you respond? That's a problem. The Politico investigation found that some spouses of other Supreme Court justices have also had careers of their own, but none currently appeared to have the potential to intersect as closely with the court's work as Barrett, Thomas, and Roberts. Justices Samuel Alito and Neil Gorsuch reported no non-investment income from their spouses in 2021. Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan are not married. Brett Kavanaugh's wife, Ashley Estes Kavanaugh, a former George W. Bush White House aide, reported a salary from her position as town manager of Chevy Chase Village, Section 5. That's very specific. But I guess that's the way they break it up there in Chevy Chase. What else have we got? This week, the court is formally welcoming a new justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson. Her husband, Patrick Graves Jackson, currently serves as chief of the General Surgery Division at MedStar Georgetown University Hospital. So I suppose there's the possibility that if you need a liver transplant, I don't know what kind of work he does, he's not going to give it to you unless you agree with his wife's decision. No, it's just not going to happen the same way it does if you're working in the legal profession.
Sup fam, it's your boy Darwin, aka Darwin_Darko, aka the most reasonable man in America, aka KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. All right, let's see. We'll continue reading through this story about the justices' wives and in some cases husbands having work that might pose a conflict of interest, but which is going unreported for some reason in their financial and ethics disclosures. Right, we just left off noting that new Justice Jackson's husband is a surgeon, so unlikely to come into conflict, let's say. Even those who are, though, I did say that if you're working in the legal profession or peripherally to the legal profession, it's more likely that you'll come into conflict. But of course, that would also include politics as well because of the nature of their caseload. But Jackson noted in a disclosure form filed earlier this year while serving as a lower court judge that she had previously left out self-employed consulting income that my spouse periodically receives from consulting on medical malpractice cases. Well, see, there is a way to intersect. Like in the cases of Thomas, Barrett, and Roberts, the names of his clients were not included in the filing. As an independent branch of government, the Supreme Court has long been determined to set its own path on ethics, with each justice left to make their own determination on when to recuse themselves from cases with no enforcement mechanism to hold them accountable. Since 1979, the justices have produced annual disclosure forms that mimic those filed by their judicial underlings. The justices say the filings comply with federal ethics laws, but some sources of potential conflict, such as expensive dining and use of vacation homes, are often kept off the lists. But now, as the Supreme Court prepares to begin a new term after a tumultuous summer in which Roe v. Wade was upended, the long-standing gaps in its ethical disclosures are being cast in a harsher light amid revelations of outsiders using perks and money to attempt to influence the justices. Former religious right leader Rob Schenck has said the organization he led for more than 20 years, Faith and Action, engaged in an elaborate scheme to play on the justices' financial insecurities by recruiting wealthy couples to wine and dine the court's conservative members. The couples were chosen for their support for a religious right political agenda and coached in advance in ways to make the justices feel more secure in their support of a faith-based legal agenda. Schenck said the overtures to some of the justices in the first 2 decades of this century included not only highly expensive meals and club visits, but invitations for the justices to use plush vacation properties, none of which appear to have been reported on their disclosure forms, according to a Politico review. That include the hunting lodge, the expensive hunting lodge at which Justice Scalia died. I wonder. Anyway, just all that hunting he was doing, somebody was paying for it, and it wasn't him. The refusal to provide spousal information is also salient because justices have often noted that their salaries, $274,200 for associate justices and $286,700 for the chief in 2022, don't compare to those of elite attorneys who can make millions in private practice. That means some of the justices who are married receive a disproportionate share of the family income from their spouses. Politico, that's a pretty interesting statement all by itself. I mean, most of them aren't superstar lawyers themselves in other firms, which is the people who we just heard were making millions. But it is interesting and coincidental how much money is being made by the spouses of members of the Supreme Court, even though they don't all work necessarily in professions that are usually known for their, or renowned for their high rates of compensation. But I guess they all find their ways into it after all. And it's interesting. So, and also just the note, like, the fact that you're getting, if you're an associate justice, $274,200 annual salary. Well, that means that a major portion of their family income is coming from their spouses. Well, a lot of people would say, oh, well, we have one income of $274,200. That'll do it. We can make it on that. And certainly don't have to work. I may want to work, but I don't have to work in a job that will necessarily bring in enough money to make up for the merely $274,200 you're getting. I mean, Washington's an expensive city and all, but you can make it on $274. Anyhow, gee whiz. That's kind of an odd thing. Anyway, I guess that's in among Politico circles. They're like, well, clearly you're going to need some supplemental income. Just $274, not going to cut it in D.C. It'll cut it. DC's not that expensive. It'll cut it and then some. And quite honestly, if you get another $100,000 out of it at a middling, a management level job at a, whatever firm in DC, now you're talking about $375,000 annually. Like, okay, you're doing pretty good. You don't really have to be, hustling to make up for the deficit. Politico emailed a set of questions to Jesse Barrett. He did not respond. Instead, a response to that query came from a spokesperson for the Supreme Court. Hey, he doesn't work there. Who said Justice Barrett complies with the Ethics in Government Act in filing financial disclosure reports. Yes, but we have questions for her husband. Anyway, a spokesperson for McRae declined to comment on the firm and Jane Roberts' behalf. They didn't refer it back to the court. In response to broader questions about the justice's spousal disclosures, the court spokesperson also cited the federal law governing judicial recusals and pointed to a nearly 3-decade-old statement in which justices with spouses or other close relatives in the legal profession rejected the notion of recusal from a case simply because such a relative works in a firm involved in the litigation. They reject that, so get lost. We do not think it would serve the public interest to go beyond the requirements of the statute and to recuse ourselves out of an excess of caution. Whenever a relative is a partner, everything moved again. So hold on a second. Whenever a relative is a partner in the firm before us or acted as a lawyer at an earlier stage. I see. The 7 justices who adopted the policy declared even one unnecessary recusal impairs the functioning of the court, though it wouldn't if you expanded the size of the court, by the way. Just going to put that one out there. Given the financial stakes involved and the interests that law firms, corporations, and activist groups have in influencing the outcome of court decisions, many ethical observers believe that the court is ignoring potential conflicts at its own peril. One of the nation's leading experts in legal ethics, New York University Law School's Professor Stephen Gillers, maybe Gillers, who knows, with a G, said the gaps in disclosure about the clients of justices' spouses fuel public doubt. We don't know who that is, and we don't know the amounts of money, Gillers said. That's a legitimate concern. Since a justice who owns 10 shares of stock in a party has to recuse even though the effect would be negligible on their finances, if that's true, why should a justice's spouse not have to reveal a very large payment from a client that could substantially improve a justice's quality of life, he asked. The vast majority of the attention on income among Supreme Court spouses is centered on Ginny Thomas, who founded her own consulting firm known as Liberty Consulting. Although her clients are now shielded from her husband's financial disclosure reports, Thomas has reportedly worked with the Center for Security Policy, a think tank accused of Islamophobia, and entities tied to conservative activist Leonard Leo, which would be a big problem because, of course, he's running the Federalist Society. Ginny Thomas has also recently reached an agreement to testify before the January 6th Select Committee meeting with the panel on Thursday. This is obviously an article from a couple of days ago. She did have a closed-door session with them yesterday. I haven't seen a great deal of reporting about that yet because there might just not be that much information leaking out to this point. Even less is known about Jane Roberts' clients. She is a graduate of Brown University and Georgetown University Law Center and married her husband in 1996. From 1987 until 2007, she worked at the law firm now known as Pillsbury Winthrop Shaw Pittman, where she advanced to the rank of partner. In 2007, 2 years after her husband became Chief Justice, she joined the firm of Major, Lindsay, and Africa as a legal recruiter, and since 2019 has worked at McRae. Youngers said the firm's efforts to attract the wife of the Chief Justice were originally kept to only a small number of the firm's employees. There was a sense that Jane Roberts would be a big get for the firm, somebody who knows everyone in this town with one of the most prestigious networks in Washington. We hoped that that's what we were doing, he said, also emphasizing that good recruiters have a level of skill beyond just their networks. However, he noted that she was a good lawyer at a decent law firm. Her husband was an extraordinary lawyer at a very, very good law firm who became the most important person in the Washington legal scene. We recruited her to help our firm with the recruitment of in-house lawyers, he said. I think some of us realized that there was a better place for her, which was to be recruiting partners for law firms, because that's both where she was, where her husband was, and then she knew lots of very important people in the legal landscape of Washington, D.C., and it was sort of a waste not to really use that. It was a waste. When Jane Roberts began her role at the firm, Youngers trained and mentored her. They started a role-playing exercise, everybody relax, to practice phone calls with potential clients. She was the recruiter and Youngers was the potential client. Youngers sat in Jane Roberts' chair and she sat in the guest chair. Gasp. What a departure. Behind Jane Roberts in her office, he recalled, there was a bookshelf with photographs of her and her husband with world leaders. She recalled seeing the Pope and Queen Elizabeth among them. Youngers said Jane Roberts soon proved to be highly effective at her job, and he noted that nearly everyone in the legal world would take her phone calls. That's true too, right? The high-profile couple's social scene is filled with fairly closed circle events of Washington, D.C. lawyers who mingle over exclusive events like wine-drinking groups, book clubs, and poker games, Youngers noted. As opposed to even some couples where he'll have a network and she'll have a network. It's not really like that, Youngers said, while also expressing his great admiration for Jane Roberts. Jane Roberts' clients include lawyers or law firms, sometimes with active Supreme Court practices, at least some of which were more likely to work with her because of her status as the Chief Justice's spouse, 3 people close to law firms told Politico. Jane Roberts has also represented top government officials at federal agencies with direct interests in court business, said Stephen Nelson, another D.C. area hiring consultant, who said he and Roberts had referred candidates to one another in the past. I think because of her background in law firms, she already had a strong reputation and network, but being married to the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court certainly couldn't hurt, said Nelson. One consultant who worked with a firm with a Supreme Court practice said that the firm explicitly decided to work with Roberts because of her marriage to the Chief Justice. It's known that her access to people is heavily influenced by her last name, said the consultant, who was granted anonymity under the condition that the firm for which the person consulted not be named. It's no secret within the industry, but I guess the place where he works is supposed to be a secret. All right. Well, I'm getting the sense of all this. I think we've learned what we need to from out of this. This is actually quite a long article, and there's lots more, and it's of great interest, but maybe for another day with a different focus. So I'll refer you to read the rest of that on your own on the weekend if you wish. A couple of other things that probably should get some time and attention here, though, before we close out for the week. One of which, jumping back to the Washington Post, this is an interesting development, I thought. Trump's paid speeches organizer is struggling financially. I guess they're just not getting paid. That's weird, but he is. Don't worry about that. A company that puts on for-profit Trump rallies, and that's what they are now. He's not a candidate for office. These are for-profit rallies that he's holding, including an upcoming Mar-a-Lago gala and multi-million-dollar fees for the former president. This firm is having trouble paying its bills, say Josh Dawsey and Isaac Arnsdorf at the Washington Post. This sounds a little juicier. A company that organized a lucrative series of post-White House paid speeches for former President Donald Trump is now struggling to pay vendors, investors, and employees, angering Trump allies who supported the effort. The American Freedom Tour, which struck a multi-million-dollar deal with Trump after he left office, has lost 2 top executives and canceled events in a number of locations as it has failed to pay its bills, according to people familiar with the activities and documents obtained by the Washington Post. Its founder and owner, who has a history of bankruptcy filings, recently sought bankruptcy protection again, so whatever Trump touches dies. The group has promised events in a number of locales, but canceled them before they began and appears to be banking on a large event at Mar-a-Lago in December to turn its financial position around. With speakers, affiliates, and investors all clamoring for their money, one of the people involved who did get paid was Trump. People close to the former president say some Trump advisors have warned against doing future events, though Trump has expressed interest because he always gets paid, right? It's not clear what that means for the tour's advertised upcoming black tie gala at Mar-a-Lago, with tickets starting at $10,000 a couple to spend time with Trump. The event includes a poolside reception and a formal ballroom dinner. Dinner and a photo with Trump costs $40,000, and a private library meeting with Trump is so pricey that it's only listed as "Inquire below." The company declined to say how much Trump is being paid for the event. The company's CEO, Brian J. Forte, declined to be interviewed for this article. A Trump spokesman did not respond to requests for comment. And, it's interesting, the focus of this thing being that the organizing company is having trouble paying its bills, which is interesting in its own right. But, the fact that Trump has a for-profit rally machine is pretty interesting. But you get paid lots of ex-presidents do paid speeches. That's definitely true. But very few of them do them in a rally setting. They are brought to an organization. The Chamber of Commerce wants to hear them speak. There's an enormous fee. It's ridiculous that the sort of thing that only an ex-president can get. But he's doing political style speeches and rallies for profit, which is kind of a different thing. And he's doing them in this context of dinner and a photo with Trump, $40,000. These are fundraising style efforts here, as though he were raising. I mean, I think that the people paying that money think that they're contributing to his 2024 candidacy, and they're not. That's a story all by itself. We'll see if that's addressed at any point in the text. The tour did have some unexpected scheduling issues over the summer that slowed things down, but we are working through it, said Larry Ward, a spokesman for the company, who isn't getting paid apparently. We are positioning the tour for greater strength and success going forward. That's some spin. You're failing right now. Oh yeah, but we're positioning ourselves for greater success later. I see. The American Freedom Tour started last October, staging glitzy events around the country that resemble Trump rallies, but sell tickets ranging from $55 to more than $4,000. In addition to Trump, the shows featured right-wing celebrities such as Candace Owens and Kimberly Guilfoyle, as well as motivational speakers offering personal finance courses. I wonder if Candace and Kimberly got paid. Essentially, it was a place where Trump supporters could buy a chance to see him and other conservative luminaries or pay for more special access, with the money not going to a political campaign, but a for-profit company and Trump himself. It was founded by Forte, a motivational speaker promoter with a long trail of bankruptcy filings and business disputes across the country. Like Lev Parnas. A little bit. The tour has had a slate of problems, including angry investors, speakers, and vendors who have not been paid, according to people familiar with the situation, who, like some others, spoke on condition of anonymity to reveal internal details. Trump joined the group with little vetting, advisors say, and some of his team were not aware of Forte's business history when told by the Post. Some unpaid investors are preparing possible legal action, demanding full payment plus interest, according to a demand letter obtained by the Post. If the company doesn't pay, the group wants Forte to step aside and give them control of the company, according to the letter. Otherwise, they said they will sue. Vendors, speakers, and other unpaid participants are lining up to collect. A lawyer working for the investors said in an email to the group, the intention is still to put a board of governance in place. Forte's spokesman said he didn't receive a demand letter. The tour has a solid relationship with its investors, Ward said. It is solid. They're trying to kill you. I mean, they're definitely solidly dedicated to that. Ward said the tour was attempting to pay both investors and speakers. Unforeseen scheduling issues for the programs caused a delay, and we asked a number of investors if their payment could be delayed until November, Ward said. Several speakers other than Trump have not been paid, including prominent Trump allies. A person with direct knowledge of the tour's finances said, "We are working very hard to make them whole, and we are confident they will be made whole very soon," Ward said. In July, the company missed payroll, according to a note to staff from Forte. "We are experiencing some growing pains, and all will be okay," he said in the internal message reviewed by the Post. The spokesman said the company is currently paying its employees. I don't know whether they're really serious about that or not. Forte recently sought personal bankruptcy protection for a fifth time this summer, according to court filings, saying that he owed 100% of the American Freedom Tour, earned $19,900 a month, but owed more than $3 million. In a response seeking to dismiss the case, the Justice Department accused Forte of abusing the bankruptcy system to try to thwart foreclosure proceedings and criticized him for traveling to Puerto Rico rather than making this fifth bankruptcy case a priority. The government later withdrew its motion at a hearing. The bankruptcy filings were over a dispute with a mortgage company, Ward said, adding, Mr. Forte visits Puerto Rico frequently, but is a legal resident of Florida. It doesn't seem to have much to do with anything. All the more reason not to be in Puerto Rico, I would think. The financial pressures at the American Freedom Tour led to business practices that some employees found objectionable. In July, the company canceled a planned event in Milwaukee, with or without a dung statue of anybody, as far as I know, but continued selling tickets online. Oh, that's interesting. According to two people familiar with the matter, at times the company has continued to sell tickets online for events that organizers knew were unlikely to happen, according to two people familiar with the matter. When another show was canceled in North Carolina, the company initially said it would honor tickets for a future event before agreeing to issue refunds. We give the option of refunds or rain checks for postponed or canceled events, Ward said. The tour's website currently lists no upcoming events. A planned show, and that's a good word for it. Planned show in Birmingham, Alabama was also canceled earlier this year. To promote the events, the company offered a 25% commission for ads and social media posts resulting in sales, according to its website. But a Republican Party county chapter in Texas that helped sign up attendees for an event there went unpaid for at least 2 months, messages show. We are awaiting payment and now 4 months overdue. That's twice the 2 month that they just cited, said Matt Makowiak, or Makowiak, maybe, a Republican consultant who leads the local Republican Party in Austin, in an email on September 7th. I will get loud and litigious if not paid by the end of the week. Well, everyone will just laugh at you for thinking that a Trump-related organization was going to pay you. Anyway, as you know from reaching out a few weeks ago looking for your payment, I resigned from the American Freedom Tour on August 3rd. Chris Widener, the company's former president and MC, who quit in August, responded, "You are definitely owed the money and should be paid promptly." Widener confirmed his resignation in an email, but declined to comment on the exchange with this guy, Makowiak, who said he was paid last Friday afternoon once the Washington Post sought comment. Makowiak said he vetted the company, before entering into an agreement with it, and heard from others that while it often was slow to make payments, it eventually did. And I guess they did. He said he demanded a written contract, which took more than a month, even though it was a simple document, according to Makowiak. I hope anyone that is owed money uses every legal channel possible, he said. A spokesman for the company said they were sorry Makowiak's payment was late. The company also recently lost its chief financial officer, Dale Ainge. In an interview, Ainge said he left the company in June due to a health issue and wished the company well. He said the company had defaulted on 2 of its loans before he left, and some vendors were complaining they had not been paid. They had to cancel a couple of events, which caused some financial issues. They were behind on things. They were behind on payments. So for me to say what kind of financial position they're in, well, they were a little bit behind in a couple of the notes. There were a couple of accounts payable that were past 60 days. Ainge said he was paid by the company and that he believed it would turn its fortunes around when he left in June. Ainge said he was approached by Forte to plan events around Trump and conservative speakers, similar to events he held for a company called Get Motivated. He said some of the events had made money, but others had not, and some were canceled even after expensive marketing. It's a startup, he said. There are always challenges. When the tour was starting, investors were promised earned 20% on their money in 6 months, according to loan documentation obtained by the Post, but internal emails show that when the money came due, the company failed to pay. We needed a little more time, Forte assured investors in March. The investment is intact. Please bear with us a couple of weeks. By August, Forte still hadn't provided the money, the emails show. In one email, Forte explained that he was trying to raise more money domestically and overseas to confirm future event dates with Trump. He offered to pay $5,000 in a week while the company closed other deals and to be able to pay in full by November. One person familiar with Forte's actions said he was constantly trying to hold off speakers, investors, and others who were seeking money, putting the biggest fire out and holding on. You have been an incredible supporter of President Trump and the events we are doing, Forte told an investor in an email. We would love it if you could attend the gala at Mar-a-Lago in December. We would like to honor you there if you are able to make it, he wrote, I guess probably in lieu of payment. Ainge said Trump was the highest paid speaker, but declined to say how much, citing a confidentiality agreement. It's in line with speaking fees of past presidents, he said. And he said Trump was the group's biggest seller, and many supporters wanted to meet him backstage and were willing to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to do it. Trump, he said, was freewheeling and congenial to the guests, of course. Ward, the spokesman for the tour, said Trump had expressed no reservations about participating going forward. President Trump has been fantastic to work with, Ward said. He has opened Mar-a-Lago to the American Freedom Tour for a gala in December, on December 1st. I'm sure he wouldn't do that if he had any reservations about the tour. President Trump loves speaking to on the American Freedom Tour. He wants to do more programs. And of course, it's because he gets paid even if everybody else doesn't. I do wonder whether they make an effort to pay Kim Guilfoyle because she could report through Don Jr. back to Trump that she wasn't getting paid. But then it's unlikely that he would care a great deal that she wasn't getting paid. I think he'd think it was funny that his son wasn't getting any of the money. Anyway, that'll wrap it up for today. There's no more time. Of course, can't squeeze in any more stories. And it's time, in fact, to turn things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy for Last Licks here on Friday. But because we've ended on a good note and finished our story, we can read through his preview of what's coming. Something that happens maybe only on Fridays, if then. Anyway, here's his full description for Blue Moon Spirits Friday. Starting off in the Bistro Cafe. I love the way he writes these things. The way Trump-appointed Judge Eileen Cannon treated a fellow and senior Article III judge is tawdry and makes her unfit to serve. We're talking about poor Judge Dearie, serving, of course, the special master here. On the rest of the menu, an Albuquerque Starbucks is the first store in the state to vote for unionization. Congratulations there. The Treasury Department moved forward with its database on corporate ownership. And in response to overwhelming demand, the Environmental Protection Agency is nearly doubling the money available to states to buy electric models of the familiar yellow school bus. Yes, I saw that they came out with those. That should be exciting and new and cut down on a lot of the noise as well. Anyway, after the break, we move to the chef's table, where Latvians will be at the table, apparently. Latvians actually voting on Saturday in a general election that has been substantially influenced by Russia's attack on Ukraine. And the U.S. imposed sanctions on a group of firms that have played a critical role in shipping sanctioned Iranian oil.
From netrootsradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, how about that? All that and more, of course, coming up on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef de Cuisine Justice Putnam. Coming up next, bon appetit. He wishes you, I wish you the same. Good weekend as well. Back on Monday, taking Wednesday off, of course, for Yom Kippur, but abbreviated schedule, but back into the action next week. See you then.